Hello friends, in my previous video I showed you how you can download and install the Anaconda software. Now in this video I will show you how you can write your code, edit and run your code in Jupyter Notebook. So what is Jupyter Notebook? Jupyter Notebook is an IDE. Now, what is an IDE? An IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. So it is a software or a tool that brings all the aspects of software development under the same umbrella. That is, it enables you to write, edit, debug and run your code. So let's get started with Jupyter Notebook. So for launching Jupyter Notebook, there are several ways. So the first way I am discussing here. So the first thing that you have to do is write Anaconda Navigator in search. Fine. Now let's click on Anaconda Navigator. So Anaconda Navigator will get launched. Let's give it some time. Okay, so Anaconda Navigator has been launched. Okay, now here you can see there are many IDs like Jupyter Lab, Jupyter Notebook, Qt Console, Spider, and there are lots of IDs. So we will currently work with Jupyter Notebook, right? So there is a button called launch. Let's click on the button. So this will launch Jupyter Notebook for us. So you can see it brings you the home page of the Jupyter Notebook, and it lists all the directories, all the folders and files that are present in the startup folder. In my machine, the startup folder for Jupyter Notebook is C users admin. Now it lists all the directories and the files which are present in that path. So let me show you the path. C users admin. So this is the startup folder for Jupyter Notebook workspace in my machine. So in the home page of Jupyter Notebook, you can see all the directories and the files which are present in that particular path, that is C users admin. Fine. So what we will do, we will create a new Jupyter Notebook file. So in the top right corner, you can see three buttons: upload, new and refresh. So we'll click on the new button. So there are several options like Python3, text file, folder and terminal. Now we are interested in creating a new IPYNB file or a new Jupyter Notebook file. So we will create a new Jupyter Notebook file by clicking on Python3. So as soon as we click on Python3, you can see it starts creating a new file, and it has created a new Jupyter Notebook file for us. Now what is the extension of a Jupyter Notebook file? Its extension is IPYNB.IPYNB, right? So now that a new Jupyter Notebook file has been created, let's rename it. No, so how are we renaming it? We are renaming it by clicking on this section, the name of the file. So let's give it a name, first notebook, and let's click on rename. So you can see our Jupyter Notebook file has been renamed to first notebook, right? So here you can see a rectangular section, right? So these are called cells. So these are the portions, or these are the areas in which we execute our code. Fine. So this is one cell. Let's write some code here. Let's take a variable x and assign a value 2 to this variable, and let's print the variable also. Fine. Let's print the variable. So if you want to run your code, either you can go to this button and click on run. So it will print the value of the variable x, or you can also run this cell by clicking Alt plus Enter. Fine. That will also run your cell. So you can take either of these approaches. Fine. Now there are mainly two types of cells in a Jupyter Notebook file. One is the usual code cell, just like the one we have just used a few seconds back. So these are the usual code cells where we write and edit our code and run the same. And the other type of cell that we use are the markdown cells. So the markdown cells are generally used for writing any comments or observations related to your code. For example, let's say you are starting a particular section of code from this point. So if you just want to give a heading, like let's say this is a new section, and first of all, what you have to do, you have to first mark this cell as a markdown cell. So you can go to this drop down and choose markdown. Fine. And in this markdown cell, you can write your own headings or comments. So let's say we are writing, this is a new section. So this is our heading. And under that, let's say we are writing, we are starting a new section from here. Fine. So this is heading 1, that is, this is the largest heading which will have only one hash, and for heading 2, that is a heading which is smaller than this heading, for that we will have 2 hash. And let's write this is the second heading. Fine. And you can continue it like this. If you use more hashes, the font size of the heading will keep on decreasing. So let's run this cell. Let's run this markdown cell. And you can see that we have got 2 headings. One is of a larger size and the second heading is of comparatively smaller size than the first one. And inside under the first heading, we have a sentence, we are starting a new section from here. So like this, by making a cell as markdown cell, you can write down your comments or observations related to your code. Fine. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you can execute a cell only after the execution of the previous cell is completed. So for example, let's say here we write some code, input, enter something. Fine. And in the next cell, well, now we can switch to the next cell by clicking this plus sign, or also we can switch to the next cell by pressing escape plus B. So pressing escape plus B will create a new cell below this cell, below the current cell, right? So what we are discussing, yes. So let's say we have written this code here, input, enter something. Let's first run this cell, okay? So what this input function basically does, it asks for some input from the user. It asks for some input from the keyboard, right? So at the left hand side of the cell, you can see the asterisk sign. What this actually means? This asterisk sign actually means your code is still running. It has, or your cell is still running. It has not yet completed. In such a condition, if you move to the next line, if you move to the next cell and start writing your code there, let's say you write x equal to 3, and before the completion of the execution of this cell, if you start running this cell, if you try to run this cell, see what happens. Both of the cell get stuck. So you should always keep in mind that you can run a cell only after the execution of the previous cell is completed. Now if we enter something here, let's say 25, and press enter, you can see both the cells have completed their execution. So what actually happened? As we gave the input, this cell completed its execution, and as this cell completed its execution, the deadlock was also released, and then this cell was easily executed. Now there might be scenarios in which your kernel is stuck, just like what I showed you previously. Let's recreate the scenario once again. Let's run this, and before the completion of this cell, let's run this cell as well. So here the code will resume its execution just if we enter some value here. But this might not be the scenario in all the cases. You may land in some cases where your kernel is stuck. Now, what is a kernel? It is just the computational engine that runs your code, that runs the code contained by the Jupyter Notebook file. So you may land up in some cases where your kernel is actually stuck, and even after several efforts, you are not able to execute your code. So in such cases, what you should do? There is, beside the run button, there is a button called interrupt the kernel. From here, if you click the button, your kernel will be interrupted. That is, in simple words, your kernel will be stopped. Now you can rerun your code. Now first you run this cell. So enter some value here, and after the execution of this cell is completed, then you run this cell. So when your kernel is stuck and you cannot resume your execution by any means, then the option to go for is pressing this button, interrupt the kernel. You can either do it from here, or you can go to this kernel menu and there you can click on interrupt. Now, apart from the interrupt option, there are several other options like restart, restart and clear output, restart and run all. So what does this restart option do? It restarts your kernel, but while restarting your kernel, all the variables that were in the memory, all those variables get lost. So let me give you an example. So when your kernel is running, if you execute a particular cell, let's say we execute this cell, so this value is stored in the memory. So if you, in the next cell, if you want to access this value by pressing and by writing X and pressing Alt plus Enter, it will give you the value that it's stored in the memory. But this is only applicable when you are using the same kernel or the same kernel session. But if you restart your kernel, if you go here and restart your kernel, look what this prompt actually says. It says, do you want to restart the current kernel? All variables will be lost. So whatever variables that you have declared so far, whatever variables or whatever values that have been stored in the memory so far, you will lose all the variables. So let's restart the kernel. And now let's try to access the value of X once again. Let's write X and let's press Alt plus Enter. You can see name X is not defined, and rightly so, because all the variables have been lost, right? The variable X is no longer stored in the memory, so it gives this error. So it is not recommended to restart the kernel until and unless it is absolutely necessary to do so. If you are stuck with your execution, always go for the interrupt kernel option rather than going for the restart kernel option. Restart kernel option will erase all the variables and all the values which have been previously stored in the memory. Fine. Now, how can you delete the cell? Suppose I do not want this cell. This cell is something that I do not want. So simply click below this cell number, and after clicking here, just press the D key from the keyboard twice and it will be deleted. So what we have done, so let's delete this cell as well. For that, you have to go here and you have to press D twice, and this cell will be deleted. So that's how you can delete a cell. Now, I have already mentioned how you can add a cell below a particular cell. If you want to add a cell below this, you can either do it from here, or you can do it by pressing Escape plus B. Now, if you want to add a cell above this cell, you can do that by pressing Escape plus A. Fine. And always remember, in Jupyter Notebook, the value of a variable is decided by the order in which you execute the cells. For example, let's execute this cell. So the current value of, we have executed this cell, so the current value of X is 3. Now, if in this cell we assign a value 5 to X, then if we run the cell, So now the value 5 has been assigned to x. Now if we, in this cell, if we print the value of x, what do you think, guys? What will be printed, 3 or 5? Let's run the cell and you can see 5 is printed. As I just mentioned, the value of a variable is decided by the order in which the cells are executed. The last cell that was executed was this cell, and in this cell we assigned the value 5 to x. So the last value that was assigned to the variable x is 5. That's why when we printed the value of x, it printed 5. Now if we execute this cell, that is, we are assigning the value 3 to x. Now if we print this, it will give the value 3. So the last cell that you have executed will determine what value a variable will hold. Fine. Now one more thing is that to check in which directory the current Python notebook file is stored, you can simply type pwd, which stands for present working directory, and if you press alt plus enter, it gives C users admin. As I just mentioned, the startup folder for Jupyter Notebook in my machine is C users admin, this path. So that's why the present working directory prints this. Now if you want to change the present working directory, what you can do, first you have to launch Anaconda prompt from here. Fine. So let's say I want to store my Jupyter Notebook files in this folder. Let's say the name of the folder is my folder. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to go to the folder, copy the path, navigate to that path in Anaconda prompt. Okay, so currently we are inside C my folder. Now in this we will launch the Jupyter Notebook. So this is another way of launching Jupyter Notebook. Apart from launching the Jupyter Notebook from Anaconda Navigator, you can also launch it from Anaconda prompt. Fine. You can see it is getting launched. So now we will not see anything getting listed in the home page because the folder that we have newly created does not contain any file or directory. So nothing is getting listed here. Now if we create a new file here and let's give it a name, file in a file in new folder, and rename it. You can save it by pressing Ctrl plus S, and now if we go to that folder, you can see a new ipynb file has been created, file in new folder .ipynb. So this is how you can change your working directory or your startup folder for the Jupyter Notebook. Fine. And one last thing that I would like to mention is that how you can download it. You can simply go to file, and there are several download options. You can download it as ipynb, you can download it as .py, as HTML, and there are several other options available. Okay, before downloading it, let's write some code here. Let's write only one line, x equal to 10, press Ctrl plus S to save it. Now you can download it. Let's download it in the ipynb extension itself. Click on this and it has been downloaded in the ipynb extension. So this is how you can download a file from Jupyter Notebook. Fine. And how you can attach or upload an existing file in the Jupyter Notebook. Let's say we want to upload this file itself. So we cannot have two files with the same name. So let's rename this file a bit. Let's rename this file to file in new folder 1. And now let's say we want to upload this in the Jupyter Notebook workspace. So how we can do that? We will by clicking on this sign, you can go back to the home page. Here there is a button called upload. Click on the button. So it will give you the option from where you want to upload it. So let's see where it was downloaded. Show in folder. So here it was downloaded. Let's copy the path. Let's go to the upload button once again. Let's give the path here. And let's upload this file into this one and open it. And you can and confirm the upload by pressing the upload button. So our this file has been uploaded, and if you click on this file, you can see the code that we had written earlier. So that's how either you can create a new file just like the way I showed you earlier by clicking on the new button, or you can upload an existing file by clicking on the upload button and uploading an existing file from a particular directory. Fine. In this single video, you may not have understood everything, but as we will keep working with Jupyter Notebook, things will get much clearer than what it is currently. So that's it for this video. If you have liked my video, please subscribe to my channel and please hit the bell icon so that you get notified when I'll upload more Python and data science related videos. And please do not forget to like and share my video so that it reaches a larger audience and they also get benefited from it.